Okay, on the podcast, 100,000 workers are about to go on strike, demanding what the country doesn't have right now, that's money. It's a strike called because, let's just be clear about this, they hate this government and they want to cause maximum disruption and get a 5-day Labour weekend. That's what it's all about. Let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, proudly sponsored by the Brothers Green. Unlock the innate power of New Zealand botanicals to support your mobility. Try the Brothers Green New Zealand Move Joint Support Tonic and join over 20,000 other Kiwis experiencing easier movement. For as little as $1 a day, you too can experience the power of New Zealand hemp seed oil for your joint health. Head to brothersgreen.co and use code DG20 at the checkout for 20% off your first order. It's a good one. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch. G'day, good evening. Welcome to the program. I'm Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief. Nice to have you along. Great to have your company. And please subscribe. Welcome on board those who did so over the weekend. We've got some real momentum now, some growing, some big numbers. So thank you so much. If you text my name, Duncan, to 3598, and I'll send you the link to my new friends that I met in Walkworth over the weekend with the yacht. Nice to see you, and thanks for your support as well. Why am I asking you this? Well, simple, really. We've got to make ends meet. If we don't, we're gone. So if you can subscribe, it would be really helpful to get the podcast here. My panel will join me shortly, Ashley, of course, and Rawdon Christie, and we'll talk about the strike. Debbie Ngāti-Wapaka has failed to declare 2 properties, which breaks Parliament's rules. Why does that not surprise you? Work testing we'll look at, the BSA overreach as well. But first, can the strike be justified? Well, you know the answer. Of course not. Government's got no money. Second thing is inflation is rising again. And thirdly, teachers strike. They went on strike last week. Get back and teach our kids. You got a 30% pay increase under Jacinda Rawdon. Look at the results. Are our kids getting smarter and rising up the international rankings? Hardly. So let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, this Thursday's strike is an organised mass sulk. It's a piece of national drama. It's pure theatre. So they can all say, hey, we were there. And there we go. We got the T-shirt as well to prove it. But let's call it what it is. It's organised mass chaos to maximise disruption, to make sure the government and to parents and kids and patients, make sure you feel it and see it and suffer in some way. Make no mistakes, folks. It's not about justice or fairness. This is about making families suffer. About making your day more difficult, about making sure that you miss out on something and giving them a 5-day long weekend. That's what they want. It's also about this, extending Labour weekend. Justified? Hardly. Teachers got 30% increase under Jacinda Rawdon. 70% of secondary school teachers now earn above $106,000. Don't come on strong, crying poor. Get back and get some results. Plenty of pay increases, and the results year on year get worse. There's your story of the teachers. Let's call it for what it is. Mass organised theatre. Like a hikoi without the haters and records, although those marching on Thursday will be card-carrying members of Labour, the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, if Te Pāti Māori still exists by Thursday. This is largely the arch centre-left on show, the arch haters of this government and the arch enemy to the right. They're desperate for Labour to return to office, so once again they can get the money in their pockets. No questions. They want huge pay rounds so we can all suffer high inflation and high interest rates again and suffer another 4-year recession. They don't get it. This government hasn't got any money because it hasn't been tough enough in cutting back. It's been soft and wimpy and refused to take the tough decisions. Hence why we now still borrow $500 million every Thursday. It's unacceptable. But this national government is not in some sort of reforming hard-ass government. It's too close to the election now to do anything tough anyway, so they'll meander on through. At least earlier governments heeded the advice of Treasury and took unpopular but hard-nosed decisions. Under MMP, it's all tinkering. And what did Einstein say? Something about the definition of madness is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Well, that's the nets, isn't it? They tinker around the margins. So let's cut to it. This strike is a political power play. Unions throwing their weight around because they hate this government and they want to make life hell for it. Judith Collins has called it, smartly so. They want a 5-day weekend is what she says. That is throwing petrol on the fire from her, isn't it? But it's not her first rodeo. They're using teachers, nurses, health workers, real people who keep the country running as pawns in their game. A whole heap of teachers probably don't want to strike at all. They're preparing their kids for exams. Meanwhile, the government's hands are really tied. They don't have the coin to throw around, do they? We all want better pay and better conditions. Of course we do. It'd be nice. But the government's already said it, plain and simple. The money isn't there. You can't squeeze blood from a stone yet, This government's also, they can't afford these things. But then the government can't afford to ignore it either because what about Australia? Australia comes knocking and takes all our people. They're only too willing to pay $30,000 more. A music teacher I interviewed last year in Queensland from Hawke's Bay is on 160k as a music teacher at a state school, state college in Queensland. Do we let more people leave that we can't afford to? We'll discuss that shortly. Do we link pay to economic growth? Do we link better pay to better school results? There's something to think about there. Why not? But no amount of strikes will suddenly create cash out of thin air. But here's the kicker. We all get screwed as a result on Thursday. Because of this strike, families are facing a full 5 days now without school. Thursdays, strike. Fridays, teacher-only day. Labor Day, Monday. You've got the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, there's 5 days. Parents are stuck juggling work, childcare, and lost pay with zero help or planning from anyone. How does 4 weeks leave go into 14 weeks holiday for teachers, 6 teacher-only days, and 3 strike days a year? That's 107 days a year out of the classroom, and we get 20 days leave maximum. How the hell are we meant to make it work? 20 days annual leave, 107 days out of the classroom for teachers and kids. Heavens. Patience. Some hospital services will be delayed. Staff shortages get worse. People suffer. Why? Because the unions want to make their point. Could someone die? Hope not. Unlikely, but entirely possible. And why? Because the unions want to make a point on a big national scale, like theatre. They want to punish the government, no matter the fallout, no matter the cost to everyday Kiwis. They don't care that parents are stressed. They don't care that kids miss school, and they don't care that essential services get disrupted. And how can the government fix what it can't afford? If the unions want change, they need to be realistic. This strike doesn't help anyone except politicians and union leaders playing hardball. Parents and workers deserve way better than this, but this isn't the way. We get it. Things are tough. But using the country's own people as pawns in a political game, I reckon that's not justice. That's just mean. It's selfish. And ultimately, it's unlikely to succeed. And when you put Palestine at the top of the meeting agenda with the Education Minister, you have lost me. And you've likely lost most parents as well. You are there to teach our kids. We're not paying you to be an international moral compass or activist. Get on with your job, like the rest of us.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
We've all been there, right? Come home from a long day at work, sit down and then get the inevitable what's for dinner. Being too tired to cook or even drive to the shop, Uber One is your answer. Joining Uber One gives you $0 delivery fee on eligible orders, 5% Uber credit on all rides, and exclusive offers through Uber, Uber Eats, and their partners. And if you sign up before the end of the year, you'll also get $10 off Uber cashback. Wow, that's pretty good, isn't it? Join Uber One today and start reaping the benefits. It ends December 31st. T's and C's, a minimum spend and fees apply. Okay, my panel now joins me, Ashley, Church and Rawdon Christie. Guys, lots to talk about. G'day, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. You see you too. How are you?
Hey, mate.
Yeah, what do I do, Rawdon? What do we do with this strike? So, 100,000 people on Thursday. That's nicely timed, isn't it? What's that, 5-day weekend?
I genuinely think this is a read the room situation. You know, I mean, we're going to talk, I imagine economy will take a bit of a focus today anyway on what we talk about. But I mean, I actually felt that when a government sits up and says, how are we going to pay for this under these circumstances, you just sort of do have to read the room. And I guess the reality is that there are a heap of small business owners. There are a heap of who are struggling. There are a heap of young people who can't get jobs. Right now, the situation right now is that I imagine anyone running a small business, anyone who wants to get a job, all they would like to do is get a wage. And that's the problem. So I just think it's a timing issue, and I know why the timing's being done now. And there is politics, no doubt, involved. But I genuinely think it's a read the room. I'm a sympathiser with some of it, but not right now.
Teachers, Ashley, 70% of them are on over 106k, secondary teachers. They got 36% pay rise under Jacinda and her time. I think Rawdon's right. You got to pick your moment, and, you know, there are 200,000 people want more hours for their workplaces. I don't know.
Yeah. So Rawdon's absolutely right. This is about reading the room, but seriously, thank God for Judith Collins.
Yeah.
Thank God for Judith Collins. She has absolutely understood what's going on here. This is totally a coordinated, contrived political attack. It has something, I am sure, to do with pay claims, but it is primarily about trying to embarrass the government. And guess what? It ain't going to work, because most of the public have had a guts full of this nonsense. People are struggling to survive, to get by on what they're actually earning. And here are these guys making these outrageous claims. But here's what really ticks it off. And this is the bit that Judith Collins so clearly understood. Her office tried to organise a meeting with the PPTA in early October, and the PPTA at that stage, the meeting didn't proceed, but the PPTA at that stage produced an agenda, a draft agenda, and the draft agenda had 4 items. At the top of the agenda of those 4 items wasn't pay conditions, wasn't the NCEA, wasn't what's going on with the curriculum. It was Palestine. It was Palestine. So here they go saying this, talking the talk about being worried about students, but at the end of the day, when it really came down to it, it was the same old nonsense. Then they came out when Collins outed them on this and said, "Oh no, there were 4 items and they weren't in any particular order," as if somehow that made a difference. I'm sorry, PPTA, but if you're going to the minister and you're wanting to talk about Palestine, you don't deserve to be taken seriously. And thank God that we've got Collins as a minister and that she's dealing to you.
So they shouldn't be in the room.
Actually, was there sorry, Duncan, was there a resolution there as to why? Because you're right, the fact they initially defended it saying, "Oh, sorry, it wasn't meant to be top of the agenda," that to me is utterly irrelevant. Totally. Have they defended why it was on the agenda?
No, and that's when I say as if that should make a difference. It makes absolutely no difference, even if it was number 4. The fact that it was on the agenda demonstrates what a joke these guys actually are.
I would say, look, thank you for your request. Given your agenda, I'm going to refer this matter to the Foreign Minister. And we will let him get back to you. There's Mr. Winston Peters. You think he's going to, play that game? Because Palestine, it's a bit like, their push for futility and everything. You can't have it both ways. You're either pushing, and it shows me one thing. They don't care for kids.
Hey, and by the way, they're entitled to have a view on Palestine. Don't get me wrong. They're absolutely entitled to have a view as is everybody else, but not in the context of representing teachers, because they don't know what every teacher's view is. They don't know they may well find if they polled their teachers that the majority of them had an opposite view to theirs. So that was not the forum within which to do it. Stick to the stuff that affects our kids and stop with the stupid politicking.
Yeah, and maybe it can be a part of the agenda, but stick it under curriculum, because surely that's actually what you're talking about Palestine for. Whether these major global issues should actually be on the curriculum. Otherwise, I cannot understand what on earth it was doing there. But anyway,
I bet it wasn't about curriculum.
This is national theatre. This is national theatre. Like the hikoi. It was the sort of thing you had to jump on if you were Māori. This here is if you're a staunch unionist, and a lot of these people will be taking the day off that don't want to be honest. A lot of these teachers, kids are getting ready for exams. Look at the time of the year it is. This is really crucial. And I know how disruptive this is. I've got a boy at this school. So I think this is about
sacrificing their money.
I mean,
Duncan, if I'm right, they're not going to get paid while they're off. And I'm quite sure there are plenty of teachers who are saying, look, I love my job. I love the status quo. Right now, we understand it's tough. The last thing I want to do is to have to give up 3 days worth of wage.
Well, one of the teachers that I'm dealing with at school, he's also our sevens rugby coach. He's also a business teacher. He does the business section, and so he texts me. He WhatsApped me last night to say, hey, I'm going to bring in another training in this week. So it's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I said Thursday. He goes, yep, I'll be there. Doesn't matter. Rugby's more important. So that's what he said. So Eddie, South African guy. So the teachers, a lot of them don't want this.
No. And as I said earlier, right, they seem to labour under the misapprehension that there's somehow some public support and sympathy for them. There's just not. There is just not. The public don't support this. Yeah. Even if the public had support for the pay claim, they have no support for this nonsense, let alone the political rhetoric that they're introducing into the debate.
What about Rawdon? The fact that Australia is targeting our people big time. I spoke to a music teacher last year from Hawke's Bay who's now in Queensland. He gets $160,000 a year for being a full-time music teacher in a high school, state's high school. So that pressure of Australia, how do we match this if we're going to keep these people, we've got to pay them properly? So what's the answer there?
Well, first of all, I want to know what the school is, as an ex-music teacher myself, and I'll be writing them a letter. But okay, so and this is where I am slightly concerned with our medical profession, because this is a need. The attraction from the overseas recruiters is obviously vast. Yes. From a teaching perspective, I think we're as likely. What you got to remember is that it's not all honey and bluebells in places like the UK right now. Here's the thing. I came to New Zealand when I got a job as a music teacher. The money was utterly irrelevant. This was about an opportunity. This was about a new life. And guess what? 30 years later, you haven't been able to get rid of me. By and large, because I fell in love with a beautiful woman and a country. But that doesn't faze me. Look, if you want to go and get 160k teaching music in Australia, that's fine. Albeit, we'll take it on the chin, because I guarantee we're going to find someone just as good coming out of the UK.
Yeah,
I guarantee it. I hope.
Can I add to that? So back in the 90s, I was on the Napier City Council. I think I've told you this before, Duncan. And I remember we were involved in a project at the time to try and get more people to move to Napier from the UK and other parts of the world.
Yep.
And I remember, and we had a presentation from a recruitment consultant from Wellington. And they said to us, look, the difficulty that you've got is that all of the people that you're trying to attract to come to New Zealand, Canada, Australia, other parts of Europe, the United States are all trying to attract the same people. And so good luck trying to get them here. So this isn't a new issue. Now, 30 years on, people like Rawdon and a whole range of other people came here anyway. So it wasn't just about money. It was about a whole range of things that were about quality of life and all the things that people have traditionally moved to New Zealand for. So that's the first thing. I don't think that's made a heck of a lot of difference. The second part of this, and I wish I had the numbers on me because there was some statistics I saw last week and I forgot what the numbers were, but there was some really strong stuff came out a couple of weeks ago indicating that a lot of the people that are going to Australia are actually people that are passing through New Zealand. They come to New Zealand, they get their citizenship, and then once they're eligible to do so, they then pass on and go to Australia. And that was always their plan. Now, I can't remember what the number was, but it was quite significant. So I don't think this is any bigger an issue than it's ever been. It's just we're focusing on it at the moment because it's one of those things that comes up periodically when we see those numbers.
Yeah, they reckon that a lot of the Indian influx into New Zealand is the backdoor stuff. So they come into here as a landing base, and then bang, and they look to head to Queensland, Sydney, Melbourne, whatever after that. And some of the stats start to show that too. So it's just a sort of a come through here, get what you need and go. But we don't want to be used as a stepping stone, do we? Do we want to be a stepping stone?
Oh, do we really? You go, Rawdon.
No, I was just going to say that. Look, I think if we're being facetious and sort it like that, maybe not. But the reality is, we're going to retain a certain number of those people who do come through. That's just a fact, and that's a win for everyone.
Great news today.
And I
carry on, Ashley. You go, mate.
No, it's all right, Quid.
Okay, inflation. Yippee yay, we're at 3%. So there's your pressure point. You can't pay anyone too much more anyway because we're at 3%. Who wants interest rates to go back up?
So here's the interesting thing about this 3%. So obviously it's going back up toward the top end of the band that the Reserve Bank adheres to. So there's this 1% to 3% range that the Reserve Bank tries to keep inflation within. And that's got a knock-on effect on things like the OCR. So the further down that number is, the more likely the Reserve Bank is to drop the OCR, and that has a knock-on effect on interest rates and all sorts of other stuff that we've talked about before. So that's all good. So there is some concern at the moment about that 3% figure. But here's what's interesting about that. When you look at that 3%, over the last 12 months, the two things that have made by far and away the largest impact on it are electricity prices, which make up about a third of that increase, and council rates, which are about 28% of it.
Yes.
So if there was ever an opportunity for the current government, who has been playing around with the idea of a rates cap over the last little while, and all of the indications on public surveys are that the public overwhelmingly supports that idea, this would be your time to do it. And we've talked before about the problem with the government being the lack of optics. So, there's great stuff going on. There's some great understanding of how the economy should work, but on the stuff which relates to optics, about doing things that are seen to make a difference, these guys don't seem to get it. Now is the time, based on this information, for the government to say, we're going to introduce a rates cap. That rates cap is going to basically say to councils that you can't increase inflation, that your rates beyond the rate of inflation, unless you've had a referendum.
I reckon it would be hugely powerful. And it would be hugely powerful. It also says to me, though, Rawdon, it also says to me that the electricity reforms they announced a couple of weeks ago were so gutless, and they could have had an impact, and they didn't. So, on both fronts, on rates, this is the story of this government, on rates and on electricity, they are wimpy, they're gutless, they don't do anything that really makes a difference, you know what I mean? And people are crying, as Ashley said, people are crying out for this.
Well, I certainly think that's one of the reasons why Wayne Brown sort of sleptwalked through for another term, because of the fact he's managed to take a responsibility on the rates front. So he's just doing it for himself or for us here in Auckland. But talking of optics, I was reading it was a really good column yesterday of Liam Dan's saying basically what we know. We all know we're going to hit 3% today. We all know unemployment's probably going to creep up again in the next. But let's actually look at the slightly bigger picture. That this has surely got to be the beginning of what we see as a steady recovery. What I was just trying to find his headline. Here it was. The economy is recovering, but brace yourself. There's bad news coming. All right, Liam, I'd like to turn that around and say more bad news coming, but brace yourself. The economy is recovering. I mean, so let's put it into context. We will now see another OCR drop at the end of November, possibly start seeing another one lined up for the new year. it's to me, this is, and I don't know how to resolve the power price thing. It's probably a bit what you said, Duncan. It's about government actually setting up and making it happen. But what we will see is, I think, as the weather improves, we'll see sentiment improving, we'll see mood improving, and I genuinely think we're at the beginning of what I hope will be a very steady increase in our lives.
I reckon it starts this weekend, actually. It starts this weekend, Labour weekend. You watch, the weather's good, people are moving, and they're mobile, so is money. You watch this happen. I reckon Rawdon's in for some big time. We're going to get a Christmas present from Rawdon this year, actually. You watch.
We just had this conversation before, actually, so I hope you're right. Hey, so 2 bits to that. So firstly, the power price stuff. So Rawdon's absolutely correct. If the government had come out a couple of weeks ago with a clear plan around what was going to happen to reforms within the power industry, which focused on what was going to happen to generation, so that we knew that there was a pathway to increase generation over the next 20 or 30 years, then I think most people would have worn the idea of a little bit of extra cost, because they could have understand where that was going. But there was none of that. Basically, they came out and said, we're not going to sell the power companies. So at the moment, I think people are pretty grudging of that. Secondly, the thing to watch really carefully is what the Reserve Bank does now, because the last time this happened, and it was after that extraordinary drop in interest rates under Adrian Orr leading up to 2021, the Reserve Bank waited when it looked like inflation was going up, and some would argue that it waited too long to act, and by the time it acted, inflation had got out of control. So it'll be really interesting to see whether they hold their nerve and they wait out the next cycle and continue to drop the OCR on the basis that they expect inflation ultimately to stay within that band, or whether they look at the experience that Orr had and say, okay, this is going in the wrong direction, we're going to start putting rates up again. I would hope that it's not the second. It'll be interesting to see what.
Good test for this new woman. Good test for the new governor. Big test.
Totally.
She's in the hot seat.
Totally.
Debbie Nardi Wapaka. Oh, she's a landlord too, eh? So she's got a couple of properties, doesn't declare them in the parliamentary pecuniary interest register, which they all have to. All MPs have lots of houses and they do this. It's not just her, there's a few of them there, but not many. Rawdon?
Yeah. So hat tip to the Fourth Estate. That this is what this is what you guys are here for, and that's to make people accountable. It's to check records and to keep people on the straight and narrow. I have no problems really with the group of MPs who've been found to have not declared. It seems to me that whatever it was, how many, 5 or 6 of them, that they all, barring one, had a reasonably good excuse, and they've tried to rectify it, and they've explained why they made the mistake. That's sort of a fairly solid outcome. There's one, however, who doesn't want to answer questions and isn't that interested, it seems, in following the rules, which are there for good reason. And to me, it just smacks of one word, and that's arrogance. Hypocrisy,
arrogance. They wanted you to abide by all their rules, and they abide by none of ours, Ashley. None of them. Even down to this one, none of them.
All of the above, but this is by no means an isolated incident. This is the same Te Pāti Māori that didn't lodge their annual return as required under the Electoral Act.
Correct.
This is the same Te Pāti Māori that had a polling booth on a marae where extraordinarily the votes that went to their candidate were significantly up on a lot of the polling booths, so much so that candidate got elected. I mean, there has been a progression of incidents over the last 12 or 18 months where these guys have basically given the finger to the rest of the country and said, we're going to act by our rules and tough luck if you don't like it.
Willie Jackson says they're terminal now. Well, they're near terminal, Rawdon. He might.
I think he's right.
It suits the Labour Party. They'd love them to be terminal, right? But I think he might be right. Yeah, Ashley. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I mean, he's obviously saying that for a reason, keeping in mind that him and Tamahiri are good mates too. So this is actually quite an extraordinary statement to come out of Willie Jackson. I think he's right, but there's an extra issue going on here, which is not just around the game playing by Te Pāti Māori itself, but the fact that Labour themselves are actually looking at the political landscape at the moment, looking at what's likely to happen to those seats at the 2026 election, and recognising that with the current configuration, if Te Pāti Māori are to sweep some or all of those seats, then the chances of Labour being able to form a government are diminishing. So this isn't just about him opining about what's going on. It's about him looking to see whether he can influence what happens to that landscape between now and the election.
Do you reckon?
I think it's far more likely to be what you just said there. Actually, I think this is Willie is he's a cunning fella. There's a reason to everything he says. However jokingly it may come across.
Yeah. Do you think? Now, none of us are qualified probably to speak about this, but do you think the Māori vote could walk away from the Māori Party?
I think probably a large chunk of it probably already has in their minds, and they'll demonstrate that next year, because there's a certain point at which Te Pāti Māori have to remember that there are probably a huge chunk of their electorate who are hard-working, relatively sensible, rule-abiding, growth-focused, behaviour-focused, and they just want to get on for the best for themselves, their people, their country. And this is a bit of a circus. And as you've just said, it may even end up destroying the party.
Here's the thing. So this is the thing we forget. We tend to treat Māori as if they all vote the same way,
No,
as
they don't.
if they're one coordinated blob that votes in the same direction. That's simply not true. There are Māori on the left, there are Māori on the right. In fact, when we had the Māori Party and the Mana Party three or four elections back with Tariana Turia and Peter Sharples, they were essentially a centre-right Māori Party versus the left-wing Mana Party. Then obviously that changed over the last 2 or 3 years. But it's also worth remembering that those seats have moved around a bit. Yes, they've traditionally been with Labour, but New Zealand First had them for most of them for a while. If you'll remember, there was the Type 5. So they've moved around. They'll move around again. They are not lemmings. They will vote in respect of their best interests. Right now, the Māori Party is resonating because young people who are coming into their first or second vote like what they're saying. But that won't always be that way.
No, but not always.
Yeah, and I was going to say, actually, on that, I mean, okay, I'm a bit of a dinosaur now, but you just mentioned Tariana and Peter Sharples. And and the people who I speak to within the Māori electorate, that's what they remember back.
Yeah.
Particularly, people of high principle who are genuinely trying to change things for the better for their people.
For their people,
I mean, there wouldn't be a day goes by that when I'm out and about and whatever, that the Pākehā people say to me, "Oh, what's the bloody Maoris? What are the Maoris? What's going on with that party?" So they're really frustrated. But in saying that, I come across a number of Māori people as well, mainly older, to be fair, to Rawdon's point, and they say to me, "I just want you to know, Duncan, that I'm embarrassed by that party." They will tell me that. In fact, a woman told me that this morning at the BP and at the gas station in Mangawhai this morning. A Māori woman behind the counter said, "I want you to know that I'm embarrassed by them." Because she's part of the community, right? She's working in there. And I was really alarmed. She brought it up, not me, And so I get there's a lot of that going on at the moment. So I think that's where you see that, maybe that collapse. But they do get the protesters. It's the protest vote, and how many of them will really turn up on the day, who knows. The issue around beneficiaries working, I know a couple of guys that are sitting on welfare. They have been for a number of years, and they are job ready, and they're not doing anything. Why don't we just time limit it? I know these new rules come in today, Ashley, but I mean, if you time limited it properly, that would force people to get a job.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I've always adhered to the idea that welfare should be a safety net and a lifestyle, and I think most Kiwis buy into that. We're a country that says, hey, when people need help, and when they're on the bones of their backside, that we should absolutely do whatever we can to lift them up and do the sorts of things that they're able to get back on their feet. But there's got to be, there's got to be a limit to our benevolence as a nation. And I think that most people basically use the system as it's intended to be used. But yeah, you're right. There are an element, I'm not sure how large it is, that tend to treat it as an opportunity basically to live off on the teat of the rest of the nation. Time limits would be one way of dealing with that. Another way would be conditions. I think under this current proposal, it's about making sure that they're job ready and that they're reporting into.
But that's always the case.
MSD.
Yeah, but that was the rules anyway, wasn't it?
I don't know. I've never been on the Benny, so
no. But the rules with job seeking, but the rules with job seeking has always been to be job ready and to be looking for work.
Yeah, exactly. Well, funny enough, now we're talking about Peter Sharples. Bring back, I mean, talking about a man of principle. He was all about the hand up, not the hand out, wasn't he? He said, otherwise you haven't empowered people to help themselves. It was one of his major driving philosophies. I think we're probably all on the same page with this one. For me, it's a case that there's a minority who are never, ever going to get up off their arse and go and do a day's work. It's really very simple. And they will always somehow sort of muddle through with handouts of some sort or another. The danger here, though, is when our mainstream media will pick up on certain isolated situations, which are genuinely really, really hard, where something has slipped through a crack, or that somebody hasn't been listened to by the right person. And I would deeply hope that our MSD is, and I'm sure they are, the frontline staff, that they're not doing it because they want to be police. They're doing it because they care, and that they will see reason there. But there's no doubt to me that, Time limit's an interesting one, though, isn't it? Because the day the time limit's up and something happens, it's going to be on the front page, and it's such a hard and fast rule. I guess what I'm trying to say is really hard and fast rules are fine, but you've got to be able to hear people out for their particular
Yeah,
circumstance.
there's always, but there are 27,000 Pacific Island workers coming into New Zealand this year for the RSE scheme. You know, the picking of fruit. And so when it first started, there were 800, because I remember being in Fiji when it was announced. 800 people. Now 27,000. We have 160,000 on JobSeeker. 27,000 workers coming in to pick fruit, and 160,000 New Zealanders looking and ready for work. Really?
Yeah, there's a disconnect there, isn't there? By the way, this is one of those issues where the optics are absolutely obvious. So you know, you're not going to go too far awry with this particular policy. It's going to resonate with most of the people that vote for this government or one of the parties of the coalition.
Yeah, but no one does anything about it, you know, because they talk tough. National talks tough in those conferences before the election about welfare. But they find it so hard to do anything. Is that because the realistic nature of it is hard to do because you're actually stopping people getting money?
Yes, I think the short answer is yes. I think the intention's there, and I think prior to the election, it's very easy to say these things, but when you've actually got to go through the mechanics of it, I think it's much more difficult than we probably understand.
Now, Rawdon, I've never paid a BSA levy as part of this podcast. I don't believe we're covered by the BSA in any way. Which is quite a relief after over the years getting the odd nudge from them. So they haven't asked for $10 from me, so that means I'm a free man. Am I? Because Sean Plunkett doesn't seem to be. How naive, sending a complaint to Plunkett saying, keep this quiet.
I think if you're saying that to Plunkett, you're actually quite obviously trying to mean the opposite, but not in this case. Yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, I don't know. I'm really on a bit like you. You know, we always were sort of lived under the rod of the BSA, and it never really did us any harm. It did keep us. It did hold us to account on how we behaved to an extent, and the complaints would be listened to, and they'd be fairly, I think, on the whole, fairly dealt with. I don't know why Sean wouldn't be a part of that. I don't know why you wouldn't be a part of that. Do you think you should? Do you think you should be held to account by the BSA?
Well, so we broadcast on the internet, right? So we're not part of that broadcast set. I don't have a committee set up to oversee me. I don't have. I'm not levied. And if you want to start judging what's on the internet, my God, you're going to need a big committee, because this is just a bit of content on the internet.
Rawdon, I can't believe this, mate, but I totally disagree with you. Let me tell you why. So, firstly, for those who don't know what we're talking about, the background to this issue is the BSA, the Broadcasting Standards Association, came out last week and indicated to Sean Plunkett on the platform that they'd had a complaint about the platform, and that they felt that they were in a position to adjudicate on it, even though he didn't fit within the context of the original legislation, which was passed in 1989. And they claimed that the basis on which they were doing that was that they had made a decision behind closed doors in 2019 that expanded their reach, expanded their scope beyond traditional pay TV, radio, and free-to-air TV to include the internet. Now, the problem with that, a couple of things. Firstly, the problem with that is that was never the intention of the Act, and it's been reviewed a couple of times since, and the government has chosen on each of those occasions not to include it. And there's a couple of very good reasons for that. One of them is that the Broadcasting Standards Association was set up to deal with organisations that were actually using bandwidth, which in most cases they were actually paying the government for. So it was about making sure that was being used responsibly. And secondly, because it was recognised that the internet is a completely different commodity. It's not owned by the government. In fact, it's not owned by anybody. And that it was a bastion for free speech that should be used as such. So here's what I think's going on. Here's where I disagree with you that this is not this may have been a reasonable and responsible organisation in the past, and I don't believe that it is anymore. And I tell you what I think's happened to it. Since about 2020, you've had this ongoing push by different organisations to try and introduce what they call hate speech. Yeah. Now, hate speech is actually not hate speech as you and I would understand it. It's basically speech that doesn't fit the left-wing ideological narrative. So basically conservatives, Christians, anybody that's got speech that doesn't meet that narrative, there have been various bodies trying to close down. It started with an organisation called the Disinformation Project, which was run by Kate Hanna. Which was an ironic name because they were anything but. They were basically the perpetrators of misinformation, and were hand and fist with the Ardern government, trying to introduce laws to shut down free speech and to censor speech that didn't meet that ideology. They eventually closed. That was replaced. There was a project going on from the Law Society, same thing. They were trying to introduce hate speech laws. There is a whole range of work that's been going on throughout the public service over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's been a bit like whack-a-mole, where the government's basically been trying to close it down. I think this is the latest incarnation of that. I think this woman was appointed by Willie Jackson, the CEO of the Broadcasting Standards Association, and this is just the latest example of somebody desperately trying to shoot down free speech when it's not adhering to the left-wing ideological narrative that we've had over the last 4 or 5 years. So I have no doubt what this is about. All power to Sean Plunkett. He will win this. One last thing before I finish my long rant. The one person. So Winston Peters has been fantastic. He's come out and basically called
Where's the rest of them?
He's called these guys the Stasi. So's David Seymour. Who hasn't? Paul Goldsmith, the minister. What's he done? He's come out and he said this is an individual complaint. It's an operational matter, and I don't have a role in it. I'm sorry, Paul Goldsmith. Yeah. This is absolutely in your wheelhouse. Yeah. This is a matter of principle that affects the whole way the act is being administered, and you need to step in right now and pull these guys into line.
I'm 100% with you, actually, because there are 5 million, 10 million podcasts in the world. A lot of them play here. There are hundreds of thousands of them in New Zealand. Rawdon, back in your box. How can they control?
Okay, in which case I want you guys to start exerting your freedoms more often. I want more outrage. I want a lot more offence, and then we'll sort of start seeing where we're at.
Now, have you seen some of the shit? Have you seen some of the shit that gets broadcast on if you like, on the internet? I mean, you can ban people about to commit murder on there if you want, but some of these people film their murders on. Like this. It's just such a wild west. Good luck controlling it, because no one can, right? Because no one can. Anything? Yeah. Do you think you've ever wanted to be a journalist, Ashley?
I did want to be a journalist. In fact, I remember when I must have been about 18 or 19, and I applied to the Daily Telegraph, which no longer exists in Napier, for a journalism cadetship, and I was pipped at the post. And
who by? Do you know who got your job?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I was working at Government Life at the time as a clerk. So Government Life is what went on to become Tower Insurance, but it was owned by the government in those days. And somebody else in the same office applied for it, and she got it. And I think she went on to be a pretty good journalist too. I can't remember her name.
She's now head of the BSA.
Somebody.
She's now head of the BSA.
Yeah,
all right, guys.
But yes, I did. Yeah.
Because you explain things well. Rawdon, thank you so much, mate. Brilliant. Well done. And
good to see you guys.
Yeah, you too, mate. And Ashley, brilliant. Well done. Thank you so much, guys. Cheers. We'll do it again. Okay, editor. David and Jan have emailed me. This is a strange one. Hi, Duncan. Just a little question. Your question is, where do the wood chips come from in New Zealand? Where do the wood chips come from that we use in New Zealand? The wood chips. They're largely local, and some come from Vietnam and some from Russia, is my understanding. But they're largely local, lots of wood chips that go in the borders. But some from Vietnam. Hi, Duncan. So as many people currently in this country are at the moment, I find myself looking at Seek. To my utter amazement, confusion, I happen to come across these jobs currently going across the North and South Island. One only, but needs to search Three Waters project. Didn't we have a referendum on this project? Haven't we, with a resounding voice, said we didn't want this project, and didn't National say it was going to be dead in the water? I'm sure a lot of us Kiwis would love to know why it is then that there are pages of jobs currently on offer for this exact project going currently. Or did they just decide to push ahead with this? Sorry about the punctuation, it's rather late, but I needed to ask someone who actually could get us some answers on this, as a lot of us voted as one of the main things we were against. Well, that and the slimming of the public servants. Better rates and tighter government spending, lower taxes. Feels like the only thing we have achieved is a blue Labour government, hell-bent on killing our once great nation. Thanks for the time, Kyle. Now, Kyle's asked me, how come Three Waters still exists? Kyle, I'll let you down gently here, because I do know the answer to this, because I made the same mistake a couple of years ago. Three Waters is an Auckland-based drain and waste company that runs around with cars that say Three Waters on the side. And here's a van just to prove it. There's the van there, Three Waters van. It's not anything to do with the government. So your outrage can be parked, I think. Hey, Duncan, subscribe to Team Duncan as soon as you launched. Growing up, Mum always sat me down at 6 p.m. to watch 3 News, and looking back, your coverage is a big part of the reason I became interested in politics. Thank you. Listening to you broadcasting today invokes a bit of nostalgia for those years. I moved overseas about 7 years ago for work, so my question is, how do you describe the mood of the nation today? I know it's bad, but how does it compare to other periods like the GFC or after the Christchurch earthquake? I think it's entirely different now. Christchurch was isolated in the sense that we felt sympathy, we felt sorry for, and we got in behind Christchurch, and it was about building a nation again. And as much as it was terrible, and as much as people lost lots, and there was huge big reinsurance issues and everything, there was also, once the absolute terror and the tragedy of it all started to dissipate in many ways, it was about a new beginning. So Christchurch is leaps and bounds, got opportunity, big time. So that's the story of that, this opportunity. GFC, I thought we managed that really well. I thought under Key and, when Labor passed that over, there's a $50 billion hole in the New Zealand economy. And Bill English ran 3 zero budgets, and got us back into surplus pretty quickly. So, yep, they cut things and everything, but they did it so well. Joyce was able to pull money from places where you didn't even know money existed. So I think they were very smarter with the economy, to be honest, back then. Although the story of Key then is probably huge opportunity, lots of political capital, but never really used it. He had all the power in the world to do what he wanted in this country, and ended up probably not doing a hell of a lot. But they did manage the economy well. Can you remember it being like this? Now, in the situation we're in, we are divided as a country. We're grumpy on both sides. Both sides blaming each other. There's no one really sits in the middle anymore. If you're on the right, you hate the left. If you're on the left, you hate the right. That's what the march is all about on Thursday. And so people have done it really hard. We're also in the middle of technological changes, AI and everything. That's completely upending businesses and companies and industries. So it's not just there's an economic slowdown. There's all sorts of things that have converged. You've had the Reserve Bank stuff things up. You've had the government spend too much. You've had COVID in the middle of all that. And now you've got this technological change as well. So it's about 5 different areas. And people who have done it their way for their whole lives are suddenly realising, shit, this is tough now. Life is much tougher. They have cameras on you everywhere you go. There's road tolls, there's speed cameras, and everything just gets a bit more difficult. There's more people coming to the country. There's less room in Auckland, places like that. So I just think that it's a tough time. And we are, as a country, we've lost our confidence, and we are grumpier, and we find it hard to do things, and companies aren't willing to take risks and hire like they did and to invest like they did because they were waiting for someone else to move. And overall arching thing on top of that is the housing market's gone flat and dead, gone backwards. And as a country of this size with so much invested in housing, when the housing market goes flat, the country goes flat. And I think that's what you're seeing. That's my take on it. I appreciate your very good question, actually. Very smart. Very good question. That's us, folks. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Really appreciate your support. Tell your friends if you can. I've had so much feedback, man. I got hit up in the street in Warkworth last night coming back from Mangawhai, and this bloke and his wife looking to live on Kawa Island. Nice to meet you guys on the street, going to the Chinese takeaway there. And I just think that there's a lot of people saying the same thing to me, that you're worried about a change of government. That's what you tell me. You're worried about what it could mean for New Zealand. You're worried about the implications, and I think it's starting to become a real thing. That wherever I go, I get head up about this issue. So thanks for following the podcast. You can text my name Duncan to 3598 to keep us here. Basically, we have to make money too. We have to cover our costs, and I'm here at MediaWorks, and I'm in partnership with them to put this out. But if you don't make money, then there's a question mark over whether you can keep doing it. Really, that's the media these days. You have to, what is it? Is it cover your ass or wipe your ass? You've just got to make ends meet. And so for a couple of years we did this and didn't make a hell of a lot. If anything, we probably lost money. But they backed me to keep this thing going, to find an audience and to put it out there, which is what we've done. This year we have found an audience, and I really appreciate you subscribing and jumping on board. The next step, of course, is stage 3, which is we have to turn it financial. We've got some great sponsors, and the Brothers Green from Christchurch. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate the partnership. You guys are fantastic. We're on the same page, and I like your edginess, and I think you like what we do as well. So I really appreciate your sponsorship and backing. Without the support of you people at Brothers Green, also my subscribers as well, and they're really growing. So thank you so much to all of you for subscribing. I see the list every day, so thank you very much. It means a lot. It means that I can stay doing the profession. That's the only profession that I know. Otherwise, I'm water blasting buildings maybe up in Mangawhai. I'll meet you that way. But I do appreciate your support. Appreciate everything you say about the podcast. But I also appreciate if you don't like it too. And if you got something nasty to say or something that is negative or something that you don't like, say it. Like, I'm a big boy now. I've got tough skin. I've been around a while. Been abused by professionals. So bring it. I'm happy for that too. And you won't agree with everything I say. But there are those people who subscribe and who pay the $7.99 a month. $7.99 a month, that's all it is. And at that price, if we get enough people on board, we stay around. Simple as that. I appreciate your support, always do. And thank you for your kind comments and, stopping on the street and saying good day, all that sort of thing. I really, it makes my day. And it doesn't put me out at all. It makes my day because I realise this is finding someone. This is getting to someone. It's quite a buzz, so I really appreciate it. I've gone from having 58 staff at AM Show, and now I have a couple of the lads here for an hour in the afternoon who put it together. I do all the ringing round, set up the interviews, do the interviews, write it, host it. Lean as. No one ever called me lean. Now they are. So thank you very much for backing us and for poking your nose in and having a look. And if you've gone the next step and support us as well financially, that's even better. But in saying that, this will always be free as well. The main podcast, it's here. We add on the stuff. For subscribing, what you get is the extra content on the Friday. We'll put out a newsletter as we do. Ask Me Anything sessions, different interviews and stuff. Just sort of bonus sort of content really. So you get more of me. That's what you want. Thank you so much to my producers. Brody, thank you, boss. Lockie, thank you, mate. To all the guys around the back there, thank you. And we'll do this again tomorrow. I remember life's no dress rehearsal. There's no curtain raiser. You can't do it again. This is your life you're living. Okay, it's not a second coming. Oh, I don't believe there's much anyway. So thank you so much. And remember, you can get a hold of me, Duncan at rover.nz. Brothers Green, thanks, fellas. Catch you next time. Thanks, guys.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, sponsored by the Brothers Green. Feed your gut what it needs. Digest Gut Health Protein Powder. I use it myself. It supports natural digestion and gut health. Made with premium Canterbury-grown hemp powder and a unique blend of active kiwifruit enzyme powder and kiwifruit skin extract, offering natural prebiotics and a nutrient-rich profile to complement a balanced lifestyle. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch.